My name is Sjoerd. I'm better known as Bull, Extra Bull Bacon on Discord. I've been involved with the project since October 2018. Uh, more involved since early 2020 or something as community manager. Um, and I've been a storage provider. So let me give the other participants to give them a chance to introduce themselves. Alexander.
Yeah, my name is Alex, and thanks for having me. I'm from the Midwest in the US. My background is working with nonprofits and higher education sector doing IT work, and I've done anything from desktop support, server administration, and now data science. So my job is with AI coming online. I think my job is a little at risk with doing the data science stuff. So this is really pertinent. I came to crypto back in 2020 and really got infatuated with DPIN and started down the Helium IoT space and heard about ScPrime through a fellow Helium node owner. And decentralized storage really made sense to me, and I just wanted to be a part of ScPrime, and that's how I just joined the community back then and started with my first Examiner, and it's been just being part of the community ever since. So that's my background.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Andres.
Yep. Hey guys, Andy Diaz from South Florida. Been in the project for quite some time. Actually, started from the original project. From moving. My background is actually in construction, primarily focused in luxury and luxury residential and commercial, with an expertise in the energy sector, specifically building out data centers for crypto mining. This was one of our big pushes back in 2018, 2019. This was when we were also when I was also excuse me, at the beginning was a pool provider for SCP as well as the ScPrime Explorer in the early days. So I've always been involved in new technologies as well as trying to build it in a data stack. I currently also am the director of telecommunications, sales and direction and sales and distribution, excuse me, for a healthcare company. It's specifically in the healthcare tech space. So we're always looking to revolutionize how we present data and how it's stored because of some of these big backbones. So I've always been staying in touch to the latest and greatest, so to speak. And this was definitely a promising project from the beginning, especially on how it's been focused and brought to the community. The relayer and the different pieces of how it's pieced together is really the missing pieces that was missing out of the first project, the green team, so to speak. But they definitely put together a lot of those missing pieces to be able to mainstream this and bring it into a compliant corporate infrastructure. It's just a matter of the next steps to get that done. But as well as where I started, I've always been in crypto from the beginning. So as I mentioned, was running and operating the mining pool as well as the forked the ScPrime Explorer, the original Explorer that we used underneath for a little while.
Yeah, thank you. Ken, we all know you, but I do want to give you at least a chance to introduce yourself.
Oh, can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Still muted.
You're still muted.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we
I
can.
apologize. I got an echo. See? All I said was hair is overrated looking at this panel.
Yeah, I think you're right. So let's follow up with the first question, building upon the keynote speech from Ken as well. Alex, as large language models training and operation require long-term storage, what features of the ScPrime distributed data center positions it as a solution for companies building a storage private internal LLM, large language models, excuse me.
Yeah, large language models. I mean, they're so data heavy and just long lived. And I think ScPrime's distributed model really provides a lot of things that tick the boxes for it. So secure, like Ken was talking about during the keynote, the security and the private storage. So the just allowing for companies to create their own virtual private networks. So the VPNs or VPDs, cost effective and scalability. We can grow the data sets. So we can do it horizontally. We can just add examiners to our solution, and it's eco-friendly too. Just it doesn't put a lot of strain on the data, the energy grid, and it's just the large data centers. Just in the Midwest region that I live in, there's actually one starting up really close to my house, and they have to re-engage with nuclear power, and so it's just one of those sustainability things that I think we can't sustain over the long term for the power. But just the training models, the inference that requires petabytes of storage. ScPrime's distributed model scales horizontally, like I was saying, and it just avoids bottlenecks of centralized infrastructure. So that's why I just love that you can do it in such a way that it's private, but the companies maintain control over their data without relying on public cloud providers. So I think that's just one of the ways, the few different ways that the ScPrime network and the features of it bode well for the large language models.
Yeah, thank you. And Andres, how would you? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to expand on that, I do believe in a lot of that. What comes out default out of the gate is encryption. So this is a lot that, as they mentioned, checks a lot of the boxes off, especially in example, we are currently implementing a large LLM in the healthcare model. The compliance required for that, every check part of, or every piece of that, this checks off. So it's just where it's located and certain certificates that would be the impedance to being able to use it in our public stack. But realistically, if we deploy it within data centers, you can get those security or those certificates immediately because the data center is the one that actually maintains the certificate. So there is a lot of backdoor methodologies that I'm looking to implement for our own data stack because we are currently dealing with the large cost of this, of maintaining our own LLM, and it has to be segmented off and restricted off from anyone else's data, as well as both encryption at rest and in motion, which again, this checks off at every piece. As you mentioned in taking ownership is that relayer piece, really giving the IT of whatever company the flexibility to control their data, the redundancy of their data, the geolocation, if they do have geo restrictions, for example, in a lot of our healthcare, they are geo restricted to that state specific, where we cannot have the data leave that state. So there's a lot of different possibilities that I see in deploying this, from at least from the healthcare perspective, in a large scale of maintaining in compliance with all the requirements. And again, the best part is you not only control the redundancy you have it at. I mean, one of the pieces that I see as well as for long term is as he mentioned, how hot or cold the data is, which also changes the storage tier. But again, it's just the active redundancy and with active repairs that I know. I'm not sure if they had completed that or if it's available now. But if active repairs is available, it's maintaining data now is it's at a complete different front where you don't have to go and verify the data. The data is constantly being verified by checksums, and if it doesn't meet the requirements, again, it's rebuilding it and re-getting it to your redundancy requirements. So from a healthcare perspective, and at least from a large LLM storage perspective, it's the ideal scenario. You're able to keep your storage costs low, ingress and egress specific to where you need it, instead of being charged from the 2 3 central 4 or 5 providers that they have, and they're charging you both ingress egress fees as well as storage fees depending on what you have it, and there really is no negotiation at large data set levels. It is what it is. So in terms of cost savings and management, it's also something that you mentioned. They can set up some of their own nodes to mitigate some of their own costs, which is, from an accounting perspective and from a business perspective, being able to accurately predict your cost and storage cost, especially at a large LLM storage level and usage, is, I mean, it's tenfold. That's currently what we're looking to deploy as a service agent to basically replace tier one with this. So it's going to have access to huge amounts of again, we're talking for large providers we work with, some of the major US carriers, United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna. Some of these players are already doing this and already using these large LLM models, and the compliance is always the biggest thing. So this checks off, a lot of the boxes, especially being able to customize it to your specific needs, whether that be, we have to keep it on-prem, it has to be a mix of on-prem, cold storage, we can, move out, but any hot storage is on-prem, so it's very dynamic that you can customize it to the specific needs of that customer specifically, or, that specific use case. So from my perspective, this is literally the way to manage the cost. Right now, the cost to set up a large AI or a large bot has this large cost because they're considering this storage when they're setting it up for you. So setting it up, they're putting a $200,000-$300,000 barrier for usage because there's a back-end infrastructure that is driving that cost. So most don't understand why there's such a high cost to it, and it's the large data sets that live behind those LLMs that control, how it processes, how it thinks, and how it keeps it within its boundaries.
Okay, thank you. What did I hear you say that if you launch the relayer on a data center where they already have the required certifications, that you inherit those certifications for the data you upload via the
Yes,
relay?
if you can prove that it's in this system both at rest and in motion encrypted as well, then the
Okay.
data cert crosses over as well for that specific box or application. That's what we're looking now as we need to deploy some of these ourselves, and it's the certification that we're currently going through and seeing what needs to be done to get these SOC 2 GDPR compliance certs for our technology stacks. So it's right along the lines of, if hybrid model, again, it's a hybrid model being in someone else's data center, but you have full control because, again, it's how you connect to it and how it's distributing that data to the rest of the nodes. So you may have the relayers in the primary data centers, but if we can, that's what we're actually going through right now is proving the the examiner itself is compliant, whether it's hosted within a compliant data center or not, because of how it's stored on the box. So we actually did send out one of ours right now for pen testing, as I'm looking at this to deploy as an internal health stack. So from our side, we we did send it out to see if there's any vulnerabilities or anything that can be said. But if we can claim this as well as a compliant, because even if you have access to it, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do with the data or decrypt it. So this is what we're looking to get kind of feedback on from the large security players in the industry, and see where we move from there. So yes, from our side, this is what was suggested from legal and the pen test teams and the security firms, was that if we spin it up within that environment after they've proven and passed the test that it meets the requirements for the certificates, then you can inherit the certs at the data center level. The reason for this is we've been looking for speed to market, as I don't know if not many are in the U.S., but in the U.S. currently it's we're working towards open enrollment for healthcare, currently open for senior and about to be open for the individual market. But there's a lot of chaos that's occurring with whether there's going to be subsidies or not. So it's just a lot of impotence that we're looking to get ahead of it as we deal with prescription assistance and different things up front, that we're looking to deploy these models, because we know there's going to be a large volume of calls and assistance required. And we're looking to try and get ahead of that, both from the service side, so from the insurance carrier service side, as well as providing this assistance to pharmaceutical manufacturers as well. So on the TPA level.
Well, that sounds promising. Again, we've heard you talk about it elaborately on in the keynote speech. Would you like to add something?
The only thing that I'd like to really sort of, talk about that I didn't actually cover in the keynote is our internal intention. And we have one very good use case that we're probably going to deploy sometime soon. We started to do work on it, and that's the support thing. And, one of the interesting, or whatever you want to call it for a word, the 4-year cycle really crushes people. I mean, it just does. And one of the things that you can tell in our community is that the engagement is down. People don't spend a lot of time in there like they used to. Price has a lot to do with that, obviously, the notion of where things are at, the ups and downs. But over the last couple of years, we did gain a community member who then became a stakeholder, who got pretty involved in Sparky, and he just sort of put the whole support thing up on his shoulders and just ran with it. And even to the point where we had multiple people providing support who were complaining that he was like doing too much support. I mean, it was crazy, where they were not getting their support actually in, because he would jump in and just solve things for people. What I really realized is that was never going to be sustainable long term, and then of course the 4-year cycle was going to grind him down and so forth. But what it did is it created this corpus, right? The channels where he was providing all of this information is there, and all that knowledge now exists. And so for us to go ahead and take that corpus and turn it into, a private model that we can then turn around and use for support internally, it's a no-brainer. And, there's not a lot additional that needs to go into that. Now, going forward, a lot of support will turn into, hey, I'm using this S3 application, it's not doing this. But even some of that will show up from the stuff that's in the channels. So support will be our very first and major use of LLMs. And then what we'll also say on AI for internally is that we were kind of late to the party in terms of using it from a development standpoint. The individual developers were doing things with ChatGPT and various different models, but it wasn't really we didn't specify it or anything like that. this summer we did change over. We did, pick up a Cursor team account. We did get CodeRabbit involved. We got a few other tool sets that are really useful. And one of the things that happened almost immediately was that UX change where we got the personal cloud interface out. And we lost a team member in that process or during that time frame. And the rest of the team right now is undergoing a dramatic juggling or shakeup, primarily because we have to figure out what is the right mix and what is the right use of the AIs going forward. So we do have a lot of work to do there internally ourselves, but we're definitely on the case.
Splendid. Okay, so Alexander, how are storage providers positioned to help drive growth of the project, and what can they do as individuals to support?
Sure. Yeah, storage providers are positioned to take advantage of this awesome network. So the virtual private data center is built into the Examiner. So you have the relay capabilities built in now. I've done it myself. So I back up all my family photos, my documents, my music, and it's now literally drag and drop to back up your files to this awesome network via a web browser. Individuals can start using the free storage grant by ScPrime, so just try it out. It speaks for itself. It is so easy, and there's so many different capabilities of hooking it up to other applications. And we're going to see one of those this afternoon. So people can also purchase more examiners if they want. They can purchase SCP and D2X tokens. They can provide liquidity on Orca or Radium, and they can stake their tokens. I'm doing all of these things. So I think the biggest thing though is just try out the Relator. It is so great to back up your stuff. We as a community can also tell others about the project when the opportunity presents itself. So I'm in the higher education industry. I work for a university, and I've been mentioning to people, hey, let's give this a try in certain circumstances when they bring up, hey, what about a solution for video backup storage? I've been talking to people at my university to help them, like, hey, could we potentially use this for backup storage? And so I think that's what individuals can do, just evangelize, but try out the product first and see if you like it. It speaks for itself. I love the product, and so I'm telling everybody I can about these opportunities. So that's what I think individuals can do.
Yeah, especially the latest iteration of the dashboard is really user friendly. When you introduce these kind of the relayer or the relayer to organizations like the like you mentioned, what is their general response?
The general response is they look at the bottom line. They're like, well, Wasabi is a little bit cheaper. And it's hard to get over that hurdle of just the cost of things. And so when I present that, they just look at the bottom line. And so I think there should be a way to be able to easily communicate, hey, we could reduce that cost time. So, and
Yeah.
I haven't gone down those roads, but just like, can you eloquently put, the 3-year plan of just how we can reduce costs over time? I think that's really great. And I'm going to use that next time I present it to anybody. So, yeah.
And Andres, what's your perspective on how storage providers in general can position themselves to help drive growth for the project, for themselves, for the as an individual as well?
As Alex was saying, I mean, the first thing I think is the most important thing is using the product. getting your hands on it, using it first thing, providing feedback. This company and the products, we are a big proponent of open source. They are a big proponent of open source, which means feedback. They're open to, taking that feedback and running with it, what they deem is the best options for what's being recommended. But again, it's a tool that once you use the tool, you realize it's getting more and more user friendly. I came from the original project, so I don't know if any of you remember how bulky it still is to upload and download and play files with the original project code, even where it currently is. Where
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
night
comparing
night
this
and
to
day.
the original project, it's again, you're comparing Apple to DOS, like the two at a level. So it's from a user's standpoint, because again, I'm very technical, so we are implementing from a data level. It's a different level than most, but from a user standpoint, the UIX has grown tremendously user friendly. So like I can see that they have been taking the feedback and running with it and implementing, but again, we need to get it in more hands because we're getting it in very tech friendly hands. So tech people are always looking at data very differently than the average user. So that's what we want, that at least from my opinion, it's there's no better market feedback than giving it to the market and asking literally what is the feedback.
Yeah,
So to me, it's one of the biggest the ways they're positioned is they have access to it. It's free. It costs them nothing, and they earn more because they can select themselves as part of the provider node or provider set that they're choosing. So again, it's a way to not only see firsthand how it works, is see exactly, maybe if you don't have a backup plan currently in place for any of your hardware at home, maybe it's time to think for one, especially being in the data storage and crypto space. It's something that you should have multiple backups and multiple offsite backups of almost everything you do. Um, I'm thankful. I'll give my real world experience in this. I'm thankful I had it because one of uh, one of the maids that came to clean spilled a drink on my laptop and basically fried not only the SSD but the motherboard. It was unrecoverable. Thankfully, I ran nightly backups and I had a backup that I was able to pull from the actual cloud and use. And again, I now have it on my new PC, but was able to recover all that data. Um, and this is thankfully it happened in the morning, early morning, so there was a nightly backup that was ran. Um, Not one of those nights where I leave it unplugged and don't plug it back in. So thankful that there was a backup, but it could have been very costly because that was the last 5 years worth of work that you know, um, development for multiple companies. Again, I wear multiple hats in what I do and run multiple different companies as well as I'm a director in some. So it's the amount of data and uh, time set back would have been quite drastic. So my real world experience from it is there can't be enough redundancy, and the ability to choose and dictate your own is something that is huge. I think it's not the standard. Oh, we'll replicate it to whatever we determine is the standard and inside of our own data centers. So it's again you get to choose it, and again for me the constant check and the hash check that it has to send in from a technical standpoint, it is basically validating the data and the integrity of the data every time. So at the end of every contract, that data is validated, and where again, when you have this at cold storage, it's only validated when you go try and pull it and then you see it's corrupt.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So one of the issues with decentralized or distributed storage is that there's a risk of provider churn. Um, if if you look at ScPrime, then I don't think we had that much of a churn looking back from 2022 when we grew by a large. But still, there's always a risk for providers to pull the plug. And well, like you mentioned, if enough of those providers pull their systems offline, then you have a critical issue when you want to download your data. So could you elaborate on what would mitigate the risk of or you could, or just on the subscribe that just could you elaborate on how ScPrime could mitigate that risk?
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah, from that, I mean, there's clearly several ways, not only as you being a provider yourself, so you have a portion of your own data that you're always guaranteed you're able to recover. But for me, it's, active repairs. I know it's around the corner, if not close to being done. But active repairs that, does the checksums, does checks and sees if it meets your requirements. If not, it's pulling and rebuilding and resending it out to the network. So it's a couple of these things that you can do on your own manually now is where you'll pull and check. You could do a nightly check and see if it meets your requirements, if your standards are up. If not, rebuild and resend it out. Which
yeah,
is I do myself on some. That's how I currently manage it and currently manage my data. But for me, it's once we get to a certain point that the system's auto doing this from a systemic level from the relayer, it becomes a no brainer. Managing it now just becomes, keeping a relayer up.
so
It's there
again,
now.
oh yeah, I wanted to give you the floor, whether that's active or not.
Well, the thing we did this year, one of the big engineering pieces was the durability puzzle. And if you go to the XNS website, there's a great article that Pavel wrote, which has a bunch of math and talks about what we did as far as durability. Because we didn't just take the SIA, active repair route and do that. What we've done is we've actually built into the network this intelligence where the host IO module is actually looking back over in history and saying, well, how much data has every individual host lost? And if a host has lost data, it gets downscored, right? It doesn't get as much data going forward. The second thing that it does is that it ultimately looks in terms of where to put the data. And if there's providers sort of sets out there that have groups of lost data, it's going to kind of bulk, right? It's going to look for wider ranges. So one of the things that we've seen all summer long is people that have not used the relayer get in there and they say, well, I'll just set up a small provider set, like 100, 200 people. But what they don't realize is that host IO really wants thousands, right? It wants to be looking at thousands and thousands of providers, and then it's always out there picking and choosing and building the most robust. So one of the things that's happened over the last several months is that all the active repairs have been going on. But you're kind of wrong in the beginning when you said that we haven't had much churn, because we have. I mean, we lost half the network, right? And when we lost half the network, we didn't have the durability built in at the time. So there was a lot of early data that's just been irretrievably lost. Now, fortunately, most of the early data was just nonsense that we uploaded for testing. But going forward right now, it's a very robust system. It's mathematically, provable to be better. When we say 11 nines, we really can prove it mathematically. And as long as we can hold the network together, right? I mean, if the whole thing doesn't go poof over the next several months, I think what you're going to find is I think you're going to find that being a very, very big strength. But anyway, I digress. It's there now and it's working.
Well, building upon that, the dashboard and the fact that storage providers are able to upload their own data makes them a stakeholder in the entire network. So basically, it's in their own interest to keep these machines running. So,
Yeah, and
Alex,
I'd also like to add, I
yeah,
was just going to say, I'd like to add to that, just with the tokenomics changing too, like Ken talked about in the keynote, it gives us more ownership. So the D2X incentivizes people to stay on the network. So pretty soon we'll be able to vote on the incentives for storage providers. So we could vote to say, hey, stay on the network and we get more incentive, we get more D2X tokens because we're providing a great service with the examiners. I think that's great to be able to decide and kind of govern ourselves and choose for ourselves what we want to incentivize. I think the company's already been doing that and doing a great job at trying to incentivize what for staying on the network and keeping data providers. But the more we use it, the more we take ownership of it. I think the more people will stay and there will be less churn. And I really think there will be a lot more people joining our network. So that's what I think.
is that then mostly from retail perspective at the moment?
Yeah, I think retail, just word of mouth, as well as yeah, just
So as
family. I'm just talking to family about it. So you know.
yeah,
Well,
and
I mean, it's just to add on that. I'm gonna say it's a mix of the more you use it, the more revenue you're gonna start driving. That then you're now gonna have it'll spark that same stream of YouTubers coming back saying you can earn so much money on this machine as it starts as it starts actually you see the curve going up, you see the usage going up, you see the earnings going up, so it does go hand in hand. So it's a way to stress test the network, so to speak. But it's live. I mean, it's not stress testing. It's live, and you're using it. You're putting your own data on it. That because for me, it's that is the biggest proponent of open source is being able to put your hands on something, use it, see how it works, use it firsthand, rely on it, because that's how it starts building trust and brand in both space and the name. Everything takes a little while, but the traction is usually from the community as the first starting ground because they're using the product. So that's been, I
yeah,
think, the biggest disconnect is the community's use of the product has been setting it and forgetting it, which yes, that is a big proponent of it, but there's a whole nother side to it that's being able to store and host your own data that I don't think most have even thought of or taken advantage of. They just plugged it in, set it and forget it, and it's humming away, working as it should be, and they haven't really needed to do anything because it is set it and forget it from the examiner perspective. So bringing it back to the basics of what we're actually providing and being able to use it as I think as like that's where the grassroots will they'll start to use it in different creative ways and different creative ways to save in again across several projects of their own, and that's where it spans out to to where it gets word of mouth from my perspective and usage.
yeah. So business adoption for ScPrime has been a hurdle. Having hearing you talk about Andres, well, thinking about to implement ScPrime as one of the backup solutions for projects you're working for. Um, how how much difficulty was it to get people in line um, and
So
and and agree with you?
So it's not so much getting them in line and agreeing. It when in specifically in the healthcare industry, it's black and white. It's does it have the certs? Yes or no. Okay, well
Hmm.
we need the certs to move forward. Um, it's kind of like having a BAA in place before you can exchange any healthcare or HIPAA related information. Kind of the same thing runs. Before we could use any technology stacks, they need to be able to sign off here, here, and here that it is compliant. Because that's the first thing they ask for. Whether it is or not, they don't care. As long as you can provide it and you're showing proof, you are technically taking liability. So it's the from the liability standpoint of in the healthcare space of dealing with private PHI and HIPAA data, that it has to, that, that's been the biggest hurdle is getting it. However, it's the current hurdle we're facing right now with most LLMs, that the two we've chosen to go with, Parloa being one of them, is because they stood up the environment within AWS, so they're able to get the AWS basically the AWS certs, which is how we're following the same path to try and do it from the data layer, because this is all just um, from the compute layer that it's using. The data
Yeah.
layer underneath is an S3 that it's plugging into. So the data layer as well, again, is an S bucket that we're currently have in AWS for speed to market because they're compliant. Um, but again, that's if the AI model was able to do it, as long as it shows that the data is both encrypted in rest and at motion, and it's stored based on whatever your requirements are, whether it's not stored at all, stored in real time just for that usage call or that service call. In our scenario, it's going to be a service call, someone calling in. So in those cases, it's things we've had to investigate currently with the being able to use an LLM as the service provider over the phone via chat. So it's all these pieces that we're currently investigating. The data piece is one of them as well, and how they were able to basically do it for the LLM side is how we're looking to basically deploy for the data side as well, because we're still in the testing phases, and what we're being charged on S3 storage and egress and ingress is insane. Again, we're in the testing phases, and we're spending tens to fifteens thousands of dollars monthly in just storage cost and egress and ingress and egress. And again, we have a very small data set that we are testing off of. Yes, we're running huge simulations where it's thousands upon thousands of phone calls of 20 to 50-minute phone calls simulated. But the amount we're being charged for egress and ingress is what's surprising us right now. So this is why, again, the owners are very prone to it if we can get the certs for it, because of the amount of savings it would provide, not only short
Yeah.
term, but again, it's the long term predictability of what it's going to cost, and not did we have more ingress or egress this month? Was it during peak hours? Was it because there's just a lot of extra fees that are being charged when you're storing data with is as an S3, because it has to be an S3 for it to work with the LLMs.
Yeah. Well, it's always what's positive about this is that it's actually this is one of the key points always used for ScPrime, is that it's cost effective, and because you don't have these large costs as with other S3 storage providers. So the fact that they are open to it, regardless, um, with the note that you need certifications, which is basically, I guess, all over the world, somewhat for bigger companies an issue, and certain branches. Um, so yeah, it sounds really promising, interesting
Well,
use case.
the one of the biggest barriers, I'll say, that which is why maybe some of the bigger players have done it, like Cigna, and again, Cigna's using it very very specifically as an after. They're using it in person, so it's taking notes in person while they're doing checkups with people, and it gives a summary, a very in-depth summary for charting. It's for charting purposes that they're using it for patient care. Um, they had to stand up and host their own servers on-prem that it's connecting to. Their cost to stand that up was, I think, 15 or 20 million. That again they had to put up, and this is their test. They're running as, again, it's a very small hospital that is doing a test, but they had to stand up the entire infrastructure. So it's that big, huge cost entry to barriers that I see is that, we're able to do that at a fraction of the cost, and you can still have a portion of it on-prem if that's required. So again, standing it up becomes much cheaper because again, you're doing a fraction of what you need to do in a traditional environment.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, Ken, would you like to chime in on that as well?
SOAP 2 and other compliance things have always been something that we've really kind of wrestled with all the way along, and we do have a strategy for it, but I always keep coming back to this notion that we aren't storing your data, right? You're not sending your data to a data center. What you're doing is you're agglomerating hard drives all over the world and creating your own data center. So, the piece that's mainly the important part is the software that's running at your facility, right? So as long as you pass muster internally with your own IT, and then, we probably have to put the relayer itself, the relayer software, through some of that kind of, scrutiny, then that's the situation, right? I mean, because I don't access your metadata. I don't access your data. I can't see anything. I can't grasp it. I can't even tell you where your stuff is. If you asked me and said, where's all my data stored? I don't know. So, it's like, it's harder to do a standard sort of, SOAP 2 type process. But we do have a person who's been working closely, who's also a storage provider, very intelligent, very knowledgeable about all this. And so I think we probably will be able to be in the vanguard of that in terms of driving that kind of certification onto these kinds of networks. I just don't, I guess what it does is I'll talk about this at the end of the presentation, in some closing remarks. But the one thing that I think that's really important here with our whole community and our whole network, and sometimes I'm a little impatient, but when we started with this idea of evolution and revolution, it just seemed like a no-brainer, that we would go through and do SME, right? We'd find some MSPs, we'd find some people that would, trust, and we'd be able to do that. And I guess really what I really thought was our stakeholder investors would, do some of this. And then I also thought some of our founders had connections that they were going to bring some of their people aboard. And none of that happened. And, we wrestled with it. It is what it is. It didn't happen. But now that we've kind of moved this new direction where we're going to say, look, we had 2,000 people stand up nodes on the network.
Did-
Hang on a second. I'm seeing something really interesting. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got hung up on something. I got these three screens. Anyway, what I want to say, the point I really want to try and get across is this: we had all these disconnected things, and so then we got this thing screwed around over the summer to be able to put providers on every EXA miner. And that was really a watershed. And, here I am thinking to myself, well, we're going to instantly get 1,000 people using the network, right? But remember, it's 4 years in on the crypto cycle. And so, when like 20 people immediately dived in, it didn't really taste very good, right? So then I had to kind of rejigger that understanding and sort of, now I'm kind of recognizing this is going to be a grind. It's not going to be easy, right? We're going to have to get these 800 people that are still on the network to start using the Relayer XM that's in their units as they stand right now. And then they're going to start getting the Alexander situation, right? They're going to start saying, well, this is super easy. What the heck? I can go ahead and show somebody else at the place I work. And next thing you know, it's like, you start getting those connections made. And pretty soon over the course of the next year, we'll start to see some sort of an exponential climb out. It's got to start that way, though. It's got to start from the people that are providing the storage on the network. Because if they don't understand how it works, and if they're not using it, and they don't care about it, and they don't trust it, and they don't want to use it, then nobody else is ever going to look at this thing. And that's exactly what happens. I got plenty of people who've invested money in this thing, either in coins or in equipment or in shares or whatever, and time, even our developers. And very few of them have actually used the product. Right? And it's enough to drive you crazy, because the minute you start using it, all of a sudden everything that I said in the keynote just starts to really ring true, and you really want to go there. So that's really the deal. We really want to drive people in this, after this presentation, into using the thing. Just get in there and use it. You got free storage. Doesn't matter what you use it for. Use it for anything. Just play around with it, have fun with it. And then let's meet back here in March and let's see where we're at. Because I think by March, what you're going to see is you're going to see the growth curve go up. Like Andre said, you're going to start to see people making money because the providers themselves are actually driving the growth curve up. And then a few of them will start to bring in the other people, that they work with or that they're compatriots with, and that will end up starting to drive things forward as well. So I really see us in a great watershed place right now. It's going to be kind of grindy for the next 30, 60, 90, and we just all have to contribute however we can, and go that direction. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, perfect. Well, and on that note, it's really well. If you own an extra miner, it's like Andres said, plug and play, and you just run it and forget it. With the dashboard, you'll be able to just integrate your backup solution, or even a network drive without any issues. And then it's still plug and play. So yeah, as a storage provider, I would encourage anyone to simply use it. Alex, if we're going back to my last question, how would you from your perspective, how would you see regulatory hurdles as an issue for corporate adoption?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I just like what Andreas said, just how he's already doing some of this stuff. We do have some people that are exploring the certifications. I just think it's going to take some people grinding to get those certifications, and whether that be the community doing it, which is awesome, or actually ScPrime doing it, because that certification for a lot of people, for a lot of companies themselves, enterprises, that is kind of the hurdle that people have to get over. And I realize that might tick you off, Ken, but it's one of those like earmark things where, hey, we have this stamp of approval then that we can use this network. So I think
No, but
in the next, go ahead.
oh, sorry, just to counter that. I mean, he does have a point,
Yeah.
which was the first issue we had when we presented it was the data's not being stored here. So we can show that this is compliant if that's what you want to show. But to show the data is being stored compliant, you have to show us one of the cubes that are storing a data, and then we have to tell you whether it's compliant or not. So there's a couple different hurdles to that, because as he mentioned, one is technically a software solution you're using to connect to the network, and the other
Yeah.
is the actual network that's storing the data. So the network is what needs to be, I mean, for it to be used in healthcare, it all has to be SOC 2 compliant. But again, the app is SOC 2 compliant if they run it, see it's both at rest and motion, which it is, that's easy. That's the easy part. It's just stood up in a SOC 2 compliant environment. It's not that it itself is SOC 2 compliant. It's just the requirements are data's both at rest and in motion, it's encrypted, and there's no, nothing stored locally, any metadata or anything that's not encrypted in terms of being able to access it manually, physically on the device, if anyone was able
Yeah.
to get the device. And then that's the second part is the environment where it sits in, is that's where that SOC 2 certification, that they have the security requirements, they have the IDs, background checks they do for anyone that accesses in and out. But that's the facility itself. That is a 2-year process to get SOC 2 certification, where it's a continuous, essentially pen test that they do for 2 years, and then give you the certification that you've maintained it for 2 years. Is how you get that the traditional way. So that's why everyone's looking for a faster speed to market, which is kind of these backdoor methods where they go set it up in a compliant or infrastructure that has the certifications already, and then it's just the certain pen test they have to do for their specific application.
Yeah.
So that again, that
Gotcha.
just to
Yeah.
elaborate in that, there is two aspects of that have to get approved or certified, which is we're going right now through the relayer piece of it. We have submitted a box to them as well, but they're currently only going through the relayer piece because it's the orchestration or controller engine first. So that's what they're verifying first before then doing the network as well.
Well, one interesting thing about that is that you do need people within your organization which are willing to overstep the boundaries, the self-created boundaries of thinking about the usage of these certifications in an older fashion, so to say, because you.
Well, yeah, that's definitely, I would say, challenge number one is the older generation is stuck in their way. I'll say my CTO is stuck on IIS, and to this day, I will not touch any of his computers that have Windows, and I openly joke about it that I am managing a Microsoft 365 organization from Linux because I will not do it on a Microsoft device. Um, I've just had way too many issues with it, so it's and again, it's a pushback that I get constantly, but we've had feedback from everyone else that everything just runs better on Linux and open source. So that is the biggest hurdle is the pushback that they're just set in their ways. They don't want to learn anything new. They don't want to learn anything to manage anything new. But cost is becoming a huge factor in it. Both
Yeah.
licensing and a lot of other things that are required on the traditional or the old route that they're used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fight that I have weekly with my CTO, and it's an ongoing joke we have. That I'm always late to meetings because it takes Windows a second to boot up on Linux because I'm doing it through a backdoor method because there's a couple things we enforce that I'm backdooring through Linux, but just to prove that it's not secure. So again, from my side, it's one of those that I can prove Microsoft's not secure, but they have the certs.
Yeah.
But I can prove it's not secure in our own infrastructure. So it's a very very fun game back and forth with the older generation currently. But as you said, it is nice that they are willing to at least hear it out and send it out to testing to see if it is a viable solution that can be used.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever reason they choose to be open to it, I guess for a lot of companies, cost effectiveness
Cost is
is
always the
one.
driver.
Cost is, yeah. So if that is what it takes to be forward thinking and be creative and see whether things are truly an obstacle or not, well, perfect. Um, Yeah, I don't have any. I think we can conclude the panel, Ken.